is a peer-to-peer network that connects individuals that have extra luggage capacity with companies that are in the textile and apparel industry. So I fell upon this problem when I started a nonprofit organization when I was an undergrad. I met women like Mayte pictured here who completely broke the mold of the aid industry. She wasn't some passive recipient of aid, and in fact, Mayte and women like her had skills that had been passed down to them over centuries, and they wanted to get paid for it like everybody else. And as I started to do some research, I found that the people that understood it the most were people who were producers in the textile and apparel industry. They were producers like Post Imperial that worked exclusively with dyers in rural Nigeria. Or Brother Vellies, based in New York City, that had a supply chain across 3 different countries in Africa. Or they were the Etsy producer. The Etsy producer served the artisan entrepreneur, where they had websites that they could sell their goods to people abroad. Or you had the fair trade producer that focused exclusively on making sure that these women got paid well. And then you had, lastly, the aggregator producer, who focused on a breadth of African countries. In particular, Swahili Modern works with 14 African nations. But the problem that they all had in common was fixing the shipping issue. Because of where they worked and who they decided to work with, they were plagued with dealing with corruption and bribery and what you would expect in certain countries where shipping infrastructure is lacking. And I knew this up front because I had a peek of that industry. It was my job at the National Port Authority of Liberia to help sell the features of the port to potential investors. But I knew what was really going on behind the scenes. I knew that there were people or small businesses rather, that were scouring Facebook groups, Google groups, asking, is anyone going to the UK or the US? Could you please carry something in your luggage? But as you can imagine, there are issues with informality, this sort of informal shipping. And for the producer, they're worried about people second-guessing themselves. They're worried about people disappearing, actually, and their items being damaged. And for the traveler, they're worried about dealing with customs issues. They're worried about the extra expectation of handling someone else's parcels, and also security, which is the most important aspect here, because we all know who this guy is, right? No one wants to be working for this guy inadvertently. But they do this because prices right now to ship small parcels are extraordinarily high. For a box about this size, it costs about almost $400 to ship from Monrovia, Liberia to New York City. And so at Shipfair, we are focused on eliminating these risks while also bringing equity to shipping, making it easier and more affordable for small businesses to ship from emerging countries. And this is how we do it. We require 3 inputs on our platform, 2 from the traveler and 1 from the producer. When a match is made, the most important part of this process is that the parcels go, the producers drop off the parcels from their offices to a certified TSA screener. There are thousands across the world. And we do this because we know that we are trying to eliminate the fears that travelers have with taking ownership of someone else's parcel. And from there, the traveler would maintain a singular chain of custody from their flight to their destination, where they would drop the parcel in local mail. And so for facilitating this match, we take a small fee, and for producers, it's 10%. So let's talk a little bit about the other side of the market. During our nine-month phase where we talked to several potential travelers, we found that they fell in one of 2 buckets. They were either part of the African diaspora, they were first or second generation Africans, and they traveled 1 to 2 times a year. But the other folks, they had more professional connections to Africa. So they worked in the aid sector, development, or the private sector, and these are what we call our hyper-frequent travelers. And how big is this industry? When you focus specifically on emerging markets, it's about an $85 billion industry, but pulling on the levers for geographic location in specific sectors, we are tackling a $5.1 billion industry. And after our pilot tests we're running now, where we're testing vetting and security measures, we are gonna be tackling both sides of our platform very systematically and methodically. So we'll be focusing on the traveler side on lead generation partnerships with tour agencies and tour operators. And next, we'll be tackling the associations, international and local associations that a lot of these producers are a part of, some of which we already have relationships with. So what have we accomplished thus far? Within the last year, we have talked to over 173 potential travelers. We spent about 5 weeks over winter break in Liberia, Ghana, South Africa. And we are currently running 7 pilot tests where we are building up databases of travelers from South Africa and Kenya. For the summer, we're currently in talks with a major association working on a project where we'll be mapping SMEs across the southern hemisphere of Africa. And for Accelerator, or for the fall rather, I am a second-year MBA and I'm graduating next month, and I will be focusing on this full-time, hoping to launch a beta project in December. So how can you help us? If you are working in if you have experience working in the travel industry, I really want to have a conversation with you because we're trying to figure out how exactly these lead generation partnerships will work. And if you have experience in the supply chain or logistics space, we're also looking for advisors. And lastly, if you will be traveling to this part of the world at any point within the next year, we would love for you to sign up for a pilot with us. And thank you guys so much, and follow us at Shipfair_co. Thank you.